aha, dude, before you open your mouth, before you walk into the room, before you say a single word, they already know. There is something about you that announces itself without your permission, something that moves ahead of you like a quiet wind before a storm, and you have spent so long doubting yourself, shrinking yourself, questioning whether you are enough, that you never stopped to notice what everyone else has already seen. They see it, they talk about it, and what they say when you are not in the room is this: that you are very intelligent, not in the way they teach in schools, not in the way certificates declare, but in the way that only life can carve into a person, in the way that only suffering, silence, and survival can build. And it is not because of how fast you think. It is not because of how much you know. It is because of two things, two specific things that you do that most people never learn to do in an entire lifetime. Two things that the wisest, most grounded, most quietly powerful people in any room have mastered. Two things that separate the ones who grow from the ones who only talk about growing. And by the time this ends, you will recognize them in yourself. You will stop apologizing for them. And you will finally understand why the right people have always been drawn to you, even when you felt completely invisible. So stay with me, because this is not about flattery. This is about truth. And truth, when it finally arrives, does not knock gently. It breaks the door down. There is a version of intelligence that the world celebrates loudly, the kind that performs, the kind that fills a room with noise and statistics and confident declarations, the kind that needs an audience to feel real, the kind that corrects others in public to feel superior in private. You know the type. Everyone does. They are everywhere, loud, certain, constantly reminding you of what they know. And then there is the other kind, the kind that sits quietly at the back of the room and sees everything, the kind that listens when everyone else is talking, the kind that asks one question that stops the entire conversation because it is the question no one else thought to ask, the kind that does not need to announce itself because its presence is already felt. That is the kind you carry. That is the kind that people recognize before they can name it. That is the kind that makes someone walk away from a conversation with you and say to their friend quietly, almost like a confession, that person is very, very intelligent. And it terrifies people sometimes because it is not loud. It is not easy to argue with. It does not chase approval. It just is. Steady, clear, unshakable. But here is what I want you to understand before we go any further. You have probably spent more time questioning your intelligence than celebrating it. You have probably compared yourself to people who seem more confident, more articulate, more decorated by external markers of success. You have probably wondered in your most honest moments whether you are actually as capable as you feel you might be, or whether that feeling is just hope dressed up as instinct. I am telling you now, it is not hope, it is recognition. It is your soul identifying something true about itself. And the two things you do, the two things we are going to talk about right now, are the proof. The first thing is this: you think before you speak. I know, it sounds simple, almost too simple to matter, but you have no idea how rare this is. You have no idea how many lives have been shattered, how many relationships have collapsed, how many careers have ended, how many wars, both personal and global, have been started, because someone could not do this one thing, could not pause, could not breathe, could not wait for the thought to become clear before releasing it into the world. The world is drowning in reaction, Everyone is reacting to everything all the time. Someone says something, and within seconds, before the words have even finished forming in the air, there is already a response, already a counterattack, already a defense, already a dismissal, knee-jerk, automatic, unexamined. And most people call this being quick. They call it being sharp. They celebrate it. But you pause. And in that pause, everything changes. When someone challenges you, you do not immediately fight back. When someone criticizes you, you do not immediately crumble or lash out. When someone says something that stings, that confuses, that provokes, you go quiet. Not because you have nothing to say, not because you are afraid, but because you understand something deeply, almost instinctively, that most people never learn. That the first response is almost never the best one. That the emotion that rises in the first second is almost never the full truth. That the word spoken in anger can live in someone's memory for decades. That silence in the right moment is not weakness. It is power so refined it no longer needs to announce itself. You have sat in rooms where someone said something that hurt you deeply, and everyone waited to see how you would react. And instead of reacting, you breathed, you thought, you chose your words, or you chose silence. And in that choice, you showed something that cannot be taught in any classroom, cannot be bought with any amount of money, cannot be faked by any performance of confidence. You showed wisdom, and wisdom, real wisdom, is the rarest form of intelligence that exists. Tick-tock, tick-tock. That pause. That small, almost invisible pause between what happens to you and how you respond. That is where your intelligence lives. That is where it breathes. That is where it sharpens itself quietly without anyone watching. The impulsive person destroys in a moment what takes years to build. They say the thing that cannot be unsaid. They burn the bridge they have barely finished crossing. They release the thought before it has become a full truth and watch it land like a grenade in a room that did not need a grenade. And afterward, they wonder why everything fell apart. They wonder why people stopped trusting them. They wonder why doors that used to open no longer open. But you are different. You have learned, maybe through pain, maybe through watching others suffer from the same failure, maybe through your own past mistakes that still live somewhere in your chest as quiet lessons. You have learned that the mouth is not the mind, that speaking is not thinking. That reaction is not wisdom. That speed is not strength. And the ones around you, the ones who matter, the ones who are paying attention to what people actually do rather than what they perform, they have noticed. They have watched you hold your tongue when holding it was hard. They have seen you choose reflection over reaction. They have seen you sit with a difficult truth instead of immediately pushing it away or dissolving into it. And what they say to each other in those quiet conversations you are not part of is that you are someone who thinks, that you are someone who is careful with your words, that you are someone who can be trusted not to explode, not to betray, not to speak before understanding. And in a world full of people who speak first and think never, that makes you extraordinary. Now let me go deeper into this, because I do not want you to think that thinking before you speak is about being slow or uncertain or hesitant. No. That is not what this is. This is about discipline. This is about the gap between impulse and intention. This is about the decision made somewhere deep in your character that what you release into the world matters, that your words carry weight, that they land somewhere in someone's life and stay there, that they have the power to build or the power to destroy, and that you choose every single time to be someone who builds. This kind of discipline is not taught. It is forged. It is forged in moments of pain when you wanted to scream but chose silence. It is forged in moments of injustice when you wanted to retaliate but chose to wait. It is forged in moments of grief when you wanted to collapse but chose to breathe. Every time you chose the harder, quieter, more self-controlled path, you were becoming someone. You were carving yourself into the kind of person who handles life with their hands steady and their mind clear. And here is what is beautiful about it, what is almost heartbreaking in its beauty. You probably did not even realize you were doing it. You probably thought you were just being careful, just being polite, just being afraid maybe, just surviving the moment. You probably did not know that in those moments of chosen silence, in those moments of deliberate thought, you were building something inside yourself that other people would one day look at and call intelligence. Because intelligence is not just about what you know. It is about what you do with what you feel. And you have learned to feel everything and still choose thoughtfully, to be moved and still remain steady, to be hurt and still remain human, to be challenged and still remain clear. That is not small. That is everything. And the world slowly, quietly, in the way the world always eventually does, has noticed. It notices the person who does not gossip when everyone else is gossiping. It notices the person who does not escalate when escalation would be easy. It notices the person who takes a breath in a meeting, or a conversation, or a crisis, and then speaks something worth hearing. And it calls that person intelligent. Well, well, well. And it is right. But now I want to talk about the second thing. Because the second thing is the one that most people do not expect. The one that surprises them when they realize it is part of what makes you who you are. The one that the world has taught you to be ashamed of. The one you have probably hidden, minimized, apologized for, called a flaw in your weakest moments. The second thing is this: you learn from everything, not just success, not just praise, not just the moments that feel like wins. You learn from the failures, from the embarrassments, from the losses, from the people who walked away, from the plans that fell apart, from the version of yourself that did not show up the way you wish you had. You learn from all of it. And not just surface learning, not just "I will not do that again," but deep, slow, uncomfortable learning. The kind that changes how you see, the kind that rewires something fundamental inside you, the kind that leaves you different. Ha 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 ha. And this is where it gets interesting, because the world does not celebrate this kind of learning. The world celebrates the clean story, the straight line from struggle to success, the overnight transformation, the moment of sudden revelation. The world does not talk about the long, messy middle, the repeated failure, the same lesson arriving 5 times because you were not ready to receive it the first 4, the embarrassing moment that haunted you for months before it finally became wisdom. But you stayed in the messy middle. You did not run from it. You did not pretend it did not happen. You sat with it. You let it be uncomfortable. You turned it over and over in your mind like a stone, looking at every surface, trying to understand not just what happened, but why. Not just what they did, but what you did. Not just what went wrong, but what you could do differently, what you could become differently. And that is genius. Not the kind the world puts on pedestals, but the kind that quietly, steadily, invisibly builds a human being into something unshakable, Most people are terrified of failure. Not just afraid, terrified. They run from it. They deny it. They blame others for it. They move on from it as fast as possible, burying it under new activity, new distraction, new performance of confidence. Because to sit with failure is to sit with the most vulnerable truth about yourself. To admit that you did not know something, that you missed something, that you were wrong, that you were less than you thought you were in that moment. And most egos cannot survive that. Most identities cannot afford it, but yours can. Because somewhere along the way, you stopped protecting your ego and started building your character. And those are two very different things. The ego wants to look smart. The character wants to become wise. The ego avoids the lesson because the lesson is painful. The character seeks the lesson because the lesson is the point. The ego says, I already knew that. The character says, I need to understand this more deeply. And you, quietly, without anyone handing you a certificate for it, chose character over ego. Again and again and again. Think about a time when something went wrong for you. Something that felt in that moment like the floor had been pulled out from under you. A decision that backfired, a trust that was broken, a goal that collapsed, a moment of public failure or private devastation. Think about how it felt, that hollow, sick feeling in the chest, that internal noise that would not stop. That endless replay of the moment, the conversation, the choice that led to this. Most people in that state either collapse completely or they close off completely. They either drown in the pain until it passes on its own without taking anything from it, or they armor up, decide they do not care, perform indifference, and march forward as if nothing happened, carrying the unprocessed wound silently like luggage they refuse to unpack. But you did something else. You processed. Maybe slowly, maybe painfully, maybe with a lot of wrong turns and false starts and nights where it felt like you were going in circles. But you processed. You asked yourself the hard questions. You forced yourself to look at your own role. You extracted the lesson, even when it hurt, even when it implicated you, even when it meant admitting something uncomfortable about your own choices, your own blind spots, your own patterns. And then you changed something. Maybe something small. Maybe one habit, one response, one boundary, one standard you held for yourself going forward. Maybe no one noticed. Maybe you never even announced it. You just became someone slightly different, someone slightly more equipped, someone slightly more clear about who you are and what you will and will not accept from yourself and from life. And you did it again and again and again. That is intelligence. That is the highest form of it. That is the intelligence that cannot be measured by any test ever designed, because it is not about information. It is about transformation. And transformation is not a skill. It is a commitment, a daily, often painful, never finished commitment to becoming more than you were yesterday. Let me tell you what the people around you see. They see someone who grows. They see someone who, when knocked down, does not stay knocked down. They see someone who, when corrected, does not collapse in shame or erupt in defensiveness. They see someone who, when confronted with their own limitation, gets quiet and thoughtful instead of loud and reactive. They see someone who is genuinely different from the person they met a year ago or 5 years ago. And that difference is not accidental. It is not luck. It is not some gift that fell from the sky. It is the result of your willingness to learn, your refusal to be permanently defined by your worst moments, your insistence on taking every difficult experience and asking it, What are you here to teach me? Most people, by the time they are adults, have stopped learning. They have calcified. They have decided who they are and what they believe and how the world works, and they have locked it in. New experiences pass through them without leaving a mark. New information arrives and is rejected if it disturbs the established order of their self-concept. They are not growing. They are just repeating the same patterns, the same reactions, the same results, wearing the mask of experience when what they actually have is repetition. But not you. You are still growing, still questioning, still willing to be wrong and learn from it, still willing to look at yourself honestly, even when honesty is unflattering, still willing to be changed by what life brings you rather than hardened against it. And that quality, that openness, that relentless commitment to growth is what separates the people who become wise from the people who just become old. It is what separates the ones who inspire from the ones who only advise. It is what separates the ones who lead from the ones who just manage. It is what makes the people who know you, the ones who have watched you over time, the ones who have seen you in difficulty and in recovery, turn to each other and say quietly, with something close to awe, "That person is very intelligent." Now I want to talk about why these two things matter together. Because separately, they are powerful, but together, they become something rare, something almost architectural, something that the world cannot quite name, but can absolutely feel. When you think before you speak, and you learn from everything, you create a kind of feedback loop inside yourself that most people never access. You make a choice, you observe the result, you evaluate it honestly, you adjust, you make a better choice, you observe again, you learn again, you adjust again. Over and over in an ongoing cycle of refinement that never stops, that never declares itself finished, that never stops looking for the next level of clarity. And the result of that cycle, maintained over months, over years, over a lifetime, is a human being who is extraordinarily calibrated, extraordinarily attuned, extraordinarily capable of navigating complex situations with clarity and grace, not because they were born that way, not because they were specially chosen, but because they committed somewhere deep in their character to the process of becoming. Tick-tock, tick-tock. And while everyone else is busy managing their image, you are busy building your mind. While everyone else is crafting the story of their success, you are quietly extracting the lesson from your failure. While everyone else is performing confidence, you are building it from the inside out, through the slow, unglamorous, invisible work of genuine self-development. And the world sees it, even when you do not, even when you are deep in the messy middle, deep in the uncertainty, deep in the doubt. The world sees something in you, something steady, something real, something that does not shift with the wind or crumble under pressure, something that in a world full of performance and pretense feels almost startlingly authentic. I want to address something now, something important, because I know that not everyone who has these qualities has had an easy time because of them. Some of you have been misread. You have been called quiet when you were actually thinking. You have been called distant when you were actually processing. You have been called slow when you were actually being careful. You have been called too serious when you were actually being precise. And some of you have, at some point, tried to become something different, tried to be louder,